St. Paul, The Fan.
Shall we begin?
Wow, wasn't that fun?
Sorry, KFAN.
I'm here to serve you.
9 to noon. And he's P.A.
9 to noon.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Mr. Allen. How are you doing today?
Man, Pierre is silly, man. How you doing? I've been all right. How you doing, Pierre?
How are you doing?
How you doing?
Brazen or compliant? This is your Compliance Thursday, The Fan, and KFAN.com.
Company man through and through.
This is your compliance leader, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is high-end compliance.
It's not bad.
This is high-end compliance right here. Hey, walk down the hall to the jazz bit and say, hey, Shingy, you got any Louis Armstrong or Miles Davis that won't get us sued? Hey! Hey! Right. Okay. All right. Takes us down Collins Way. Bourbon Street for some. Frenchman Street, 9 to noon. It's 9:01 in the Love Covenant. Paul Allen, mad producer, KFAN. All right. So the compliance piece gets 45 seconds into it, and then there's not really much it can do after that, right?
Yeah, correct. As a matter of fact, here's how it goes.
All right. What's next, guys? Oh, wait. Are you coming back for us?
That single. Hang on.
Da-na-na-na. Great to be back from the NFL Scouting Combine. Good morning. This is 9 to noon. I'm Paul Allen. A joyous 2.5-day run in Indianapolis. Any combine? All right, 3-2. A joyous 2-ish days in Indianapolis. Speculation and steam central. Any questions off that combine run? Stefanski and speculation, rumors and Rattler, and a Toledo corner the right people rave about, almost, if making him sound, like a cross between Sauce Gardner and Lester Hayes. The Combine has come and gone for yours truly. Anybody have any questions? Combine questions and comments via the old text machine. 64686, 64686. Any questions? Quasey was quite open and direct 9 to noon. And with his presser, O'Connell told Florio 100%. We want Cousins back at quarterback. Late steam arrived post 9 to noon yesterday, or 10 to 1 just for fun, Indy style. The Falcons covet Cousins more than Fields.
Oh my gosh.
That's a big one. 64686. Late steam percolating down Indianapolis way. Post 9 to noon or 10 to 1 just for fun. The Atlanta Falcons seem to covet Kirk Cousins more than Justin Fields.
Oh my gosh.
Con, if accurate, that's a big one. And good morning.
Good morning. And I had planned on broaching that topic with you during Vikes Bites. But the key to that, PA, is what I was thinking when I started hearing the Justin Fields news yesterday. And I was begging for something. It was two awesome shows that you did down in Indy.
Thank you.
In some ways, I felt like
while you were there.
Me too. And while you were not having shrimp and cocktail sauce at Harry and Izzy's at the Indy airport, in some ways I felt you were coming back. And in the end, we would kick off the show today talking about, in some ways, similar positions of dominoes that need to fall for the purple. This Justin Fields thing is interesting to me because it does two things.
Late steam, too.
If Fields was to go to Atlanta, that does two things. That takes them off the board for Kirk Cousins as a destination in free agency, but it also eliminates a QB spot in the top 10 of the draft for the Minnesota Vikings. And so all over the idea, and you're seeing Vegas odds, minus 450 Fields to the Falcons and all of that. But if there's some steamrolling to be done,
right,
that includes the idea that Arthur Blank and Raheem Morris and everybody down there in Atlanta are actually still coveting / pining for the services of a Kirk Cousins, and that's preferred.
Yeah.
Well, that's monkey wrench terrorism and spokes all over.
Right.
Because Ryan Poles, PA, he has to trade Justin Fields before free agency starts.
Right.
So that he can get the most out of that transaction. The Falcons have to wait until free agency begins to sign Kirk Cousins.
Jeez.
So you're talking about a three-handed poker hand right now where you have Falcons staring at Vikings. You really going to do this to us? You're really going to hit him with 2 or 3 years? You're actually going to give him the money he wants because we're going to pay him. I know we can pay him.
Right.
And the Bears are like, just shut up, both of you. Just take Justin. Well, somebody take Justin so we can take Caleb in late April and make it all good.
Here's the deal.
So steamrolling in Indy off to what appears to be a fun start after your 2 days down there.
And the Denver piece was better than I thought, and we'll just leave it there.
Ooh. The
Denver piece with J.J. McCarthy and what was said last week from a draft Nick friend of mine who works in the radio business but happens to be quite good at what he does. Well, as I learned during one of the 2 days at Indianapolis, the J.J. McCarthy Rocky Mountain Get Highway, that's pretty good. So let's just keep that in mind up to the draft.
Okay.
Now you mentioned the shrimp cocktail and the cocktail sauce that is of the St. Elmo's variety. It's a Immortality. There's also an ancillary. There's a 1A called Harry and Izzy's, and it's in the airport. And as tradition would go, and yours truly needs to have a better appreciation for tradition, and that has been a situation all of my life. Con, the mad producer, Nordo, is very in tune with tradition and chastised me when we first chatted when I arrived at FM 100.3 KFAN today. So what we're going to do is the first segment script, we're going to rip that bad boy up because I got a story that I just got to tell you because you now have chided me 2 times, including once publicly with 40 copyright Dan Cole, the common man, couple 13, 14 people listening.
I always love that one.
Well, I got much more for you, too, including Spencer Rattler steam that I'm going to share with you. But you asked about the cocktail sauce. Here's what happened. Just going to lay it out like this. Didn't plan to include it 9 to noon, but now I'm compelled. The spirit is moving me to share. So yours truly gets to the Indianapolis airport, an airport you've been at several times.
Yes.
Nice airport, right?
Oh, I love it. It's clean. It's accessible.
Yeah, and like the Minneapolis airport, I mean, T1, that has to be the best in the country for accommodations and spaciousness, and so we know high-end airports, right?
MSP, I think, is the elite of elite for high traffic.
Yeah.
Millions of passengers each year, all of that, absolutely. But for regionals like Indianapolis, they do a tremendous job there.
The intention was to keep tradition alive.
Okay.
And stop by Harry and Izzy's. We had some members of the Vikings public relations staff who were on the same flight with me, and no names will be mentioned. But as we negotiated the TSA line, all right, I'm in the clear covenant. I'm not in the pre-check covenant. I'm in the clear covenant. This little baby tiny airport doesn't have clear. That's cool. So it's about 20, 25 minutes to get through TSA and get screened and everything, all right? So now, there's still ample 20 to, let's say, 35, 40-ish minutes for Harry and Izzy's, tradition, shrimp cocktail, and that sauce. Amen?
Amen.
All right, so the line's longer than I thought. That's cool. We still got time. So then I get to TSA. And along with a mutual friend of ours, who also is going through TSA. So now you go through the scanner bit. Put your hands up.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I got you, Johnny. Put your hands up. Spin around, cool. Well, we have a red spot, and this has happened before with my black Brack's pants. All right. I don't know what the spot is, but the spot's in the spot.
Yeah.
I always love that one.
So now it's all right. Meanwhile,
I've had that with a zipper several times.
could have been the zipper. Might have been something else.
I always love that one.
It wasn't what was behind it, I'll tell you that.
Are you excited to be at the combine, or are we just having a problem here, Paul?
I always love that one.
So the mutual friend of ours, all right, something in the bag required the extra aggressive screening.
Oh, yeah.
Like bags going off to the side, stand over there.
4 ounces of toothpaste, etc.
There you go. Right. Could be 2.6 ounces. And it was scrutinized everything day at the Indianapolis airport yesterday. All right. So now the clock is ticking on Harry and Izzy's. All right. So my man's like, here's where the spot is, in the front and in the back. And I'm like, if you only knew.
I always love that one.
That spot on the screen. Cool. All right.
If I would have been in earshot of that.
Rob, I thought of you, and I mentioned it to I mentioned it to a member of Vikings PR that if Nordo was here, he would be loving everything that was happening, especially if he could hear the dialogue that was taking place. So TSA guy doing his job. They're just doing their job, and high levels of respect for TSA specifically here at the at MSP. Yeah, where like a fist bump, high five, say hi to whatever, a bunch of different people every single time, because I've been flying more of late than A, preferred, and B, than I generally do.
Trying to pet the drug dogs and all of that.
Yeah, right. You see, it's a good bait. I don't touch the dog. Sorry. We'll tell the dog snout not to touch that dog.
I always love that one.
So, amen, TSA. A lot of respect for you and what you do, because you have to deal with some of the worst of humanity on an hour by hour basis, as we will see at the airport. So my man's like, well, there's the spot. What do you want to do? Go to that room over there, or we can just go over here to this little area. And I'm like, bro, let's just go over here. There ain't nothing in there, metaphorically speaking. So you can just go at it. It wasn't brothel-esque.
I always love that one.
But my man, he had a job to do. So he's getting up in there.
Oh, yeah.
And you got people around and everything. And I'm like, get after it, man. I don't care. Let's just get this done so I can get to Harry and Izzy's. All right. So he gets it done. We did, let's say, a spot check.
I always love that one.
I'm home and cooled out. All right. So now my stuff's coming out of the TSA bid, where it gets analyzed.
Yeah.
Just the regular one, not where they pull it to the side.
Right, like where Charches goes.
Exactly, and they cleaned all of the buckets and everything in extra special fashion for me in honor of Charch, because he wasn't there. Well, one of the trays come out, and I only have one shoe, and so I'm like, "Where's my other shoe?" All right, so TSA guy was great. I go, "Bro, I only got one shoe, but I don't care about the shoe. My wallet was in the shoe." And he's like, "Sir, we'll get your shoe." Meanwhile, they're really, really CSI Indianapolis Criminal Minds analyzing analyzing a friend of mine's bag. All right, now that's taken 15 minutes right there. So we're at about 15 minutes. So shrimp cocktail's about dead. Where's my shoe? Okay, and then there was another guy who was right behind me, and he's holding out one sock with one shoe on, going, "Yeah, I lost my shoe too." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Where? I don't care about my shoe. What about my wallet?" All right. So the guy's like, so we're not making a scene or an issue. We're just waiting for our shoes. We should have each taken our socks and put them together and did a picture and put it on Twitter. That's what the kids do these days. All right. So here comes my shoe. Cool. Guy gives me my shoe. So now my shoe, because there was something out of the ordinary. Well, now it has to go through the dusting and the spraying and
come on
and the scanning and, bro, it's my shoe, okay? But me, most importantly, where's my wallet? So he takes my wallet. TSA guy takes my wallet and he hands it right to me. All right, and I said, all right, well, I had, and this wasn't true, but I was running a bit because I'm KFAN raised. Well, there was $1,400 in here, so I'm going to count it if you don't mind. He goes, I didn't touch it. And so I said to TSA guy, that's what they all say.
I always love that one.
Okay, he laughed, so I knew the bit was on.
Good.
So then I pull the money out, flip through it quickly, and I go, oh, wait, there's $1,600. I owe you $200.
I always love that one.
and because they can be so tense because humanity can be so awful that to be able to have my man crack a little laugh, giggle or chortle a little bit as he was handing our mutual friend his bag. I got my shoe back. I ran the bit worked. I got my wallet back. All the money was in there. That all was A+, save missing Harry and Izzy's. So that's why I missed the tradition and the shrimp and the cocktail sauce and the French dip if I'm so inclined, because I'm waiting for Spear. I'm waiting for mutual friend to have his bag. I mean, seriously, CSI, Horatio Kane on CSI Miami has never scrutinized, Callie Duquesne has never scrutinized anything as much as my man's bag.
I always love that one.
And then I was waiting for my shoe, and then my wallet, and then the brothel. Then the spot check, and just so everything that went into it. That's why we did not get to the tradition.
At least you left with a smile on your face.
Right. But it was about 30 minutes, man. The whole thing was about 30 minutes. So there's your answer. But significantly speaking, and for the purpose of the radio show, and yours truly back from the combine, anybody have any questions? I mean, there's much to share. We have time for it during Vikes Bites, 64686 for the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune will be joining from Indianapolis about 20 minutes from now. Last year, when I was invited on Texans TV, Mark Vandermeer, the play-by-play voice, and this football analyst named John Harris. All right, I didn't know who John Harris was, and he asked me about rookie quarterbacks, and I'm like, well, I don't watch a lot of college football, but I guess I kind of like Will Levis from a few things that I've heard. And my man said, of the three, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Will Levis. Let's just put it this way. This guy, John Harris from Texans Radio, he is as good at explaining rookie quarterbacks as anybody I've ever met. But last year, my guy told me Stroud will be the best. Young will struggle because of the offensive. He has to have the right kind of offensive line, which he didn't. If he doesn't have the right kind of offensive line, his first year he'll struggle. And if Levis gets to play, you'll be more impressed with his running than people may know at this stage. But the accuracy with his arm's going to need some work, but he should be okay. Bro, look back at those seasons. So I found him, and I'm like, good to see you again. Mind if I tape an interview for the 9 to noon audience? And because just like Gabe nailing Jordan Addison last year, weeks in advance of the draft with no steam, just off work, this guy has to be part of the mix. So I pressed him on J.J. McCarthy, Drake May, and then gave him a wild card, and he snaked his way for the Vikings to Spencer Rattler. So I got steam. I got so much steam right now. It's unbelievable.
The Southern soothsayer.
It's unbelievable how much steam I came back from Indianapolis with, and I can't wait to share. That's what we do. 918 in the Love Covenant. All of that's courtesy of TimberTech and TimberTech.com. What's on deck 9 to noon includes that draftnik, that draft guru from down Houston way. That's at 11:15. Don't miss it. I promise you that you'll absolutely love it. Nordo produces, and I'm Paul Allen. Vikes Bites are next.
9 to noon.
The Fan.
Vikes Bites.
What up, Vikes Bites, 9 to noon. Vikes Bites is brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef, a Clearwater, Minnesota company. 20 years later, they're all over the place, all over the map with regenerative agriculture and delicious grass-fed beef products. You go to lifetimegrazed.com, learn about how they do it, what they do, where they're from, and where they are now. And you can shop, and a box of meat shows up at your doorstep. Go to lifetimegrazed.com. I'm going to start here, PA. Was there a bell of the ball at the combine? And so whether it was, and you mentioned it, everybody leaves the combine with a name. And I'm curious if you left the combine with a name. Now, Quinion Mitchell was mentioned during the two shows quite often.
Yeah.
You had Jordan Reed on. Jordan Reed does such a good job breaking down players and making those mixes and matches and kind of getting us really way farther down the road of opening our eyes to some names that just live outside of the top 11.
Yeah.
So was there a particular name that maybe you hadn't heard of before? Really any position where it's like, okay, drills and steamrolling and all of that beyond that, I'm leaving Indianapolis going, I got to learn more about that guy.
It is South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler. And that's really the only answer, because Jay Reed started it Tuesday. Then Houston draft guru John Harris, and that chat you'll hear at 11:15, and what he says about the South Carolina kid, and then late yesterday as I was leaving, a non-Vikings NFL person post-show yesterday when I was chatting about Spencer Rattler off the mic, swore to me Rattler with Kevin O'Connell would be exactly what this talented kid needs. I got no idea where Spencer Rattler's set to be drafted. Feels like it's Friday-related terrorism. But nevertheless, Spencer Rattler, that would be the name for now.
Vikes Bites! Speaking of quarterbacks, Tom Pelissero was on with the Power Trip Morning Show today and was asked, like, hey, if the Vikings re-sign Kirk, so there's a number out there and he likes it, they like it, everyone likes it, and they re-sign Kirk. What about the idea of still taking a QB at 11? Here's Tom Pelissero with the Power Trip.
I mean, I think that there's, a distinct possibility that they could end up, drafting a quarterback. If they re-sign Kirk, I don't anticipate them going down that way just from a resource, management type of a perspective here. But, you never say never. I mean, that position's too important to not have the future plan. And ultimately, Kevin and Kwesi and everybody else know that they've got to find that next guy. And that's kind of the spot that they're in. I think that's the best way to kind of look at where the Vikings stand right now, which is, the Wilfs historically have never wanted to go full ground up rebuild. They always want to be competitive. And if you're, Kevin O'Connell, you've shown you can win 13 games with kind of this mishmash of veteran players, and you may not have the guys who are totally fit, but ultimately you want to go and get the quarterback. Well, if you're never terrible, if you're never just a really, really bad team, you don't have a top 10 pick. The 11th overall pick is, about as high as the Vikings realistically are going to be, just because they're never going to be terrible with their team building philosophy and, with the ownership philosophy and with a really good head coach in Kevin O'Connell. So and that's where it comes down to with Kirk Cousins, it's the price. If they feel like the price is right to re-sign Kirk, whether that's, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, or whatever, then, I'd be shocked if they go and then draft the guy at number 11 just because of all the money that you're already putting into that position. But if you re-sign Kirk, I wouldn't be surprised if they come back in, second round, third round, whatever, and take the guy who might be sliding through just because you need to have somebody else in that development pipeline.
And maybe that's, and by the way, podcast his entire conversation with our buddies on the Power Trip free iHeartRadio app. Maybe that's Spencer Rattler, that second or third round guy that's sliding on through and sliding on into purple and gold. But a couple of things off that. I will ask you this. Do you believe in his assessment when he talks about the Wilfs philosophy? Where it has always been about with the Wilfs, we need to be competitive. We need to be a good product on the field each and every year. That we do not look at this. We look at it long term, of course, as a business, as a franchise, etc. Mm-hmm. But we don't look at it as sacrificing a season for the long term. And then that brings me to kind of what he was talking about is if you're not going to be at 11 on a regular basis, and the Vikings, I think the highest they've picked since the Wilfs owned the team, that would have been third overall, but then technically fourth with the trade with Trent Richardson 2012, right?
Oh yeah.
And so other than that, this pick 11, I think the last time they were down this far would have been
Trey Waynes,
Christian Ponder.
Yeah.
And so they are not here very often. Do you agree with the assessment of if they were going to re-sign Kirk, the idea is we want to be competitive, and therefore the amount of resources putting into the QB spot via number 8 would then make us hesitant to continue down that road under the idea of making us smoother or better in the future?
Well, re-signing, I firmly believe, not only what was shared 9 to noon, but at these press conferences with O'Connell and Kwesi. I mean, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was as open and direct as anybody ever has heard him, specifically on the radio show. And likewise for O'Connell, but he's generally open. But they both, it would just be straightforward looking you in the eyes lies after everything they said about Cousins at the combine, but see, how can you really figure out if they didn't want to re-sign him and like he goes somewhere else? It could be like, well, we wanted it. We just, ran out of cash to compete or whatever.
We had a number, he wouldn't meet it.
Boom. That's a more truncated way to put it. So re-signing him does not preclude you from doing something at or around 11, but I do agree with Tom that I think it diminishes it. So re-signing, there are those in this camp, and I may be in this camp with the right to change the opinion. It's like with the let's use the Spencer Rattler for an example. Let's just say quarterback, but let's use him. All right, that Jared Verse cat from Florida State that you dig, the Jerzon Newton cat from Illinois that I dig, a defensive lineman. If they re-sign Kirk, then at 11 they get one of those two guys or something like that. And then they come back with in a legitimately deep quarterback draft. Too many people are talking about it in Indianapolis into Saturday for me not to believe it. I'm going to want to see the games like usual, but nevertheless, that was the atopic buzz there. How deep this quarterback. If you will get quarterbacks on Saturday who within 3 years will start for you, and if they have the right talent around them in the right situation, they will be 10-year starters. It's one of those drafts with quarterbacks, which is very rare. So if you think taking early second round, say from 41, you move up. If you take the quarterback draft this year and then go back to 2020 with the receivers, greatest wide receiver draft, deepest in the history of the NFL. Now it's apples and oranges, but it's kind of in the same fishbowl here. The early second round quarterback you would get could be Chase Claypool, which means it's going to set you back a little bit, or it could be T. Higgins, which is a W for many years. So it's like that. It's determining which one in the deep part of the pool where everybody's enjoying the hot fun in the summertime, which one is going to be Chase Claypool and which one is going to be T. Higgins or somebody drafted very early in that super deep draft. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, is re-sign Cousins, get the best defensive lineman you love at or around 11, make a move for that quarterback with your next pick.
Last thing for you, Vikes Bites. Thank you, Thousand Hills. The news that Josh McCown was named quarterbacks coach of the Minnesota Vikings. You can draw parallels. Cliff Kingsbury had interviewed with the Bears at one point. He has Caleb Williams-related connections. He's now the OC in Washington. Antonio Pierce, I heard this with Pelissero. I did not know that he helped recruit, I believe, Jaden Daniels to Arizona State before a few years later he would end up at LSU.
Wow.
And, of course, the news coming out yesterday, Josh McCown was working with the high school team that Drake May played at. Do you play any games with that in terms of, well, hey, he knows Drake May. Obviously, the Vikings must be trying to make a play for him, despite how unrealistic it might be for them to get up. But whether it's that or it's just he's the QB coach here in Minnesota, what do you like about? You're going to hear a lot more audio, I'm sure, in the future once we get a chance to chat with Josh McCown. But he's the QB coach.
The mental gyrations after learning that yesterday, that Josh coached at Drake May's high school and coached Drake May at his high school in Charlotte. The mental gyrations were fun, but it I guess it adds to, but it doesn't really amplify for me, a belief that there are significant teams that really appreciate what Drake May does. Now, another little bit of steamy aside to that whole conversation. And, this is just, there's so many conversations in passing that I or other people have that the nuggets, the crumbs are just, they're like pouring on you like out of buckets.
Yeah.
Well, one of them was that Marvin Harrison Jr. is, well, let's not completely eliminate him from the top three. Okay. Because he can be that guy. I mean, he is that good. And with the right quarterback or the right, whatever goes into high-end success early, it's let's not rule him out of the top three. Now, Would Mac Jones be the right quarterback? Would Sam Howell be a quarterback who can get something like that out? But Caleb Williams is going first. So now it's 2 or 3. Meanwhile, I'm taping an interview with Cardinals offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. And this is before, so we didn't talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. on the microphone, but Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Arizona Cardinals. I think it's like, yes, sir, can it please happen right now to be with Kyler? But I'm not completely convinced 2 or 3 are not making a move that way for that young man, which would do something to the quarterback market, and make it teams want to jump and jump and jump. And also, I don't think it's going to be as expensive as I went to Indianapolis, moving way up, like 3 first-round picks, stuff. I don't think it's going to be that because of the depth of the quarterbacks in this draft. So it's there's a lot of steam to share, and I'm very excited right now, very hyperactive. I want to. Well, I am. I just have so much written down that I want to disperse it all at once. But we have 2 days. We have today and the Friday Football Feast tomorrow, and we have Ben Goessling on the horizon from Indianapolis, and we will steam share with him and get his thoughts on Combine 2024. Those were Vikes Bites. My headphones were off early. I missed the sponsor. Who is it?
Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed, grass-fed beef, PA.
And we appreciate you for that. Back after this.
PA on the Fan.
Ben Goessling covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. And this is courtesy of Standard Heating and Air. Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. And the Scribe is still in Indianapolis at Ben Goessling, to follow via Twitter at Ben Goessling. And here he is. What's up there, BG?
Not much. How are things back home?
Good. It's nice to be back now. Generally doing 2 radio shows there, recording a bunch of interviews, playing some back today and tomorrow. The standard operating procedure for yours truly. But
sure.
With those quarterbacks speaking and doing their press conferences on Friday, really for the first time in quite some time, I was kind of like, yeah, man, I wish I was here to just like see what Spencer Rattler looks like and like listen to Drake May and hear Ben ask him about McCown coaching him when he was at a high school in Charlotte. And, but I won't be there Friday. Will you be there tomorrow?
That is the main reason I am still here until tomorrow afternoon. Yes. So right. I will be here for all of those things. I will ask Drake May if he has heard the famous Josh McCown, he's all by himself, touchdown, no, the Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs, call, how many times they've listened to that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll get that whole question in, but I'll see what I can do for you.
All right. Okay. Much appreciated. Every little bit helps. But now, regarding the Vikings offseason, Ben Goessling, are you more or less confused now than, say, when you arrived in Indianapolis?
I don't know that I am any less confused than I typically am. So that the baseline is some level of confusion.
Okay.
But I think I have a better sense of what they are trying to do. I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull all of it off. I think they're certainly very interested in bringing Kirk Cousins back. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They've been clear about that publicly. I think privately all of that matches up. The question, I think, is, are they going to be able to pull all of that off? And are they going to be able to go get the quarterback that they want to bring in as a successor? They are spending a lot of time talking to quarterbacks here. I think they're very serious about trying to do that with this draft class. It's just that is a hard thing to try to pull all of that off and line everything up financially to make it work for players that have different ideas of when they want to play. I think all of those things are kind of a tough line to walk. And it's certainly, if you can pull it off, I think it's a good way to go about it. But I'm very curious about the logistics of this over the next few weeks, starting with Kirk Cousins. How much of this are they going to be able to line up if they, in fact, want to go that route?
So when you say connecting these dots and if they, quote, can pull it all off, end quote, do you believe that would be re-signing Cousins and then getting whatever they want at or around 11, and then maybe drafting a quarterback like very early on Friday, round 2?
Well, if they can pull that off, I think that's certainly a easier way to do it. I think it's re-sign Cousins and then get your guy. Now, if you can do that in round 2, if you can do that without having to give up extra guys to go get that player, I think that is certainly ideal. And it does make it very complicated. I think if you move up, I mean, if you draft a quarterback at 11, that player is already tied with Dante Culpepper for the highest drafted quarterback in Vikings history. If you move up one spot, that is now the highest drafted quarterback in Vikings history. And that, I do think, changes the expectations of how soon does that guy play. So when I talk about how you line it all up, does that player want to come in and sit when they're being drafted that highly? Does Cousins want somebody that's right there that soon and possibly ready to take over that job? I mean, that's not really up to anybody but the coaches to decide when they want to do it. But I just think there are personalities and wants and wishes and egos that get involved in all of that stuff that I do think makes it a little more complicated. Not saying that they can't do it, but I think that piece of it is worth considering.
Ben Goessling from the Combine in Indianapolis, weekly guest 9 to noon, and with Bumper to Bumper with Barrero generally on Fridays, and it's 9:46. Good morning, Nacho Libre on the horizon. Well, Justin Fields is a key piece here, and you chat with more people than I do at the Combine, because you're there longer than me, and we hear at times, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ben, is we will hear so many things in such a short amount of time that parsing and navigating your way through what's valid and what's not. Have you found in all the years you've covered the Combine that A, there's an art to it, but B, it's the mind becomes convoluted? For instance, with Justin Fields. All right. So I come into yesterday's radio show and, low key, I have an opinion on just how I think some things are going to go. So then Courtney Cronin joins and she's like, okay, well, I think the Fields thing's going to happen relatively soon. Not tying Justin to a team. All right. Courtney covers the Bears for ESPN. And then Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, joins. And Mike's juiced in and he's chatting with all these agents and everything in Indianapolis. All right. Well, he's like, Pittsburgh is going to, they're going to make Pickett / Rudolph Pickett. They're going to try to make that work. And he absolutely said like, this is what I believe. And I think I'll keep it up to the draft. All right. Well, that eliminates a potential team for Fields and or Cousins. So I'm like, all right, Fields, Georgia native, they're going to make a trade to get him. Well, right before I left yesterday, from somebody I really, really trust, that I was told Atlanta prefers Cousins over Fields, and quite honestly, it's not close. All right, so, wow. Well, how do we handle that now, Ben?
Yeah, it is tricky because sometimes you're talking to people who are telling you what they think should happen. Sometimes you're talking to people who tell you what they think will happen, and people are talking to different people. And so you do have to, I think, use a lot of wisdom and use a lot of discretion in parsing through all of this stuff. And there, you certainly, at least from my vantage point, you hear a lot more stuff down here than what you put in print. That, the things that I hear, I'm not the type that's just going to go say, hey, here's every little thing I'm hearing, because it is hard to know with complete certainty what's going to happen. And it's certainly whether you get people kind of just shooting from the hip or whether you get people that are trying to steer you in one direction with some kind of a motive. I mean, you have to kind of work through all of that stuff. So kind of like you're saying, you go back to the people that you trust and the people that have shown themselves to be trustworthy over time, and they probably get a little bit more weight in how you form your viewpoint of things. But yeah, it is certainly more art than science to that part of it.
Free agency starts March 11th, right? I mean, March 13th.
Yep, March 13th.
Okay,
negotiation window is the 11th.
There we go. So, I mean, if Atlanta has adoration for Kirk Cousins, which it very well may, I mean, that could be a March 11th bit, where unless he and the Vikings can get something, done right around that time. Do you think if Cousins heads somewhere else, but let's say Atlanta, then that could be that legal tampering oxymoronic Monday, March 11th. Could it be like that early?
Yeah, it could. I mean, really, I think the Cousins thing could happen at Vikings. It has to happen March 11th or March 12th, because if he is on the roster when the league, I think the wording is the last day of the league year. And I never know, does that mean like the start of free agency in the afternoon, or is that the strike of midnight? Whatever it is, they basically cannot sign him in a way that works with their cap, because all of that dead money that we've talked about hits on that Wednesday. Yeah. So we are going to know from the Vikings part of things by March 13th at the very latest if Kirk Cousins is going to be back. People can start talking to him and start making offers on March 11th. So if he is going to sign somewhere, I think it will happen very quickly. And he may say, I want to take a visit or that kind of stuff. But we're going to know on the Vikings end of things, when that clock hits new league year at the very latest, we will know whether Kirk Cousins is going to be back or not. And I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense if he's going to go somewhere, because Zach Robinson, the OC, comes from the Rams. It's going to be a familiar offense. They have some weapons. He has family. His wife's family's from Atlanta. He spends time down there every offseason. I do think that is, if you're looking for a legitimate competitor for the Vikings for Kirk Cousins, I do think the Falcons make a lot of sense. We'll see if that comes to fruition. We'll see if the familiarity with Kevin O'Connell, with the offense, with Minnesota, with the weapons he has here, if that wins out. But I would expect Atlanta is probably the team that has the best chance of being an alternative to the Vikings for Kirk Cousins.
Ben, how do you read into, if in any way, the addition of a coach? All right, so Josh McCown is going to become the quarterback's coach, and the quarterback's coach, Chris O'Hara, becomes passing game coordinator. And Chris is very smart. I mean, he was part of that Super Bowl team with O'Connell and Wes Phillips and so on. But how do you read into like why that happened?
Well, we talked with Kevin O'Connell a little bit about that yesterday, and he mentioned a more holistic approach to the quarterback position. Now, what does that mean? I think the fact that Josh McCown has played the position in the NFL, I think means something to Kevin O'Connell, I should say. Kevin O'Connell coached Josh McCown. Kevin O'Connell's first quarterback room as a QB coach in the NFL was Josh McCown and Johnny Manziel. Like, how's that for an introduction to the NFL? But I think the kind of the veteran approach to the position, a guy that has played the position, played a lot of games for a lot of teams, is something that Kevin O'Connell wants to use to mold his quarterbacks, probably in a way that Chris O'Hara certainly, they value a lot of what he does game planning wise. Kevin O'Connell talked about he's going to be more involved in game planning perhaps than he was in his old role. But there is, I think, something he values from the percentage, or from the standpoint of, I've played this spot. I've had to make off-platform throws with a guy coming this way. I know where to look. Those things, I think he wants to glean from Josh McCown and have work into his, teaching of quarterbacks, especially if they're going to be younger quarterbacks in the building, whether it's Darren Hall or a draft possibly. So I think that part of developing a young quarterback is attractive to them about Josh McCown. I think that's part of the reason he's here. He also shares an agent with Kirk Cousins, so there's a familiarity there as well. I think this can play in a couple of different ways. But I do think kind of having him as a veteran voice for whatever young quarterbacks are here is something that's attractive to the Vikings.
Did Ben, last one, and thanks for the time, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.
Did you find Kwesi to be not just more comfortable and open than usual, markedly more comfortable and open than usual?
Yeah, I did. And I think the thing everybody kind of grabbed onto was the comments about Jefferson. I think that was something that, a little bit, all the rumors and chatter that have gone around the last couple of weeks about trades, I think they started to see that and say, well, wait a minute, what's actually happening here? Where is this coming from? And I think he wanted to kind of quash that and say, look, we are not thinking about doing this. So, yes, I think he's starting to get a better sense of, if I want to change the narrative around the team, my words can have a big effect in doing that. I thought a lot of what he was saying on the Jefferson front of things was aimed at that. Let's stop the chatter. Let's have it come from my mouth as adamantly as I can do it, that we are not thinking about trading him. I think a lot of what he said was kind of aimed at changing the chatter and realizing that he can handle it.
All right, my brother. We got some connection-related problems here, and but we got most of it. And if you have time, we'll catch up with you next Tuesday, our regular Ben Goessling day, when you're able to stop by. And safe travels back. We appreciate you. It's 9:56. Here comes Nacho Libre around.